episode. Welcome back to Boys on Film. My name is Phil. I'm joined by Raj. We are talking about the London Film Festival, a film that we've seen, a documentary called Chasing Amy. So Raj, I went into this not knowing anything about Chasing Amy, which I know is going to be very bizarre for a lot of people. Say, oh my God, it's an iconic film. Was it from the 90s? Early to mid 90s? I'm guessing you've seen it more than once.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan. I don't think there's anything that he does that I don't like, and I even really like his shit stuff. So, I'm definitely a huge Kevin Smith fan. And to be honest, I had no idea about this film. You know, there's been a few documentaries about Kevin Smith and people profiling his character and how he's built up his little independent film empire. So I thought this was going to be another one of those, like, ooh, I'm talking to Kevin Smith about his movie Chasing Amy and what it meant to me. And oh my God, like, there are so many layers to this film. I just was like not expecting it. Like, just when you're learning something amazing, you know, a little tidbit of the story along the way, another layer is peeled back and you're like, ooh, didn't quite realize that. And then when they get into like the Joey Lawrence Adams interviews and stuff, and
wow,
like,
yeah,
I was like, what is going on here? Like, this film starts off like with really good intentions, but it exposes a lot. It opens up a lot of vulnerabilities.
In a lot of ways as well, because it's also about the filmmaker as well as the subject, because the filmmaker, Sav Rodgers, I know it's a documentary, but obviously there is a lot that should be a surprise. And I think, like you said, there are a lot of layers. So I was like, throughout the whole thing, I was like, wow, okay, we're going this direction. Now we're going in another direction. It wasn't just about the subject matter, but obviously it was about the whole thing collectively and how important not just cinema is, but important this movie was for him.
This film really talks about the Chasing Amy being like Sav's life raft, you know, and his favorite film of all time, and how he identified with it as like a 12-year-old kid in Kansas, I believe. You know, that's interesting enough for a film, but like just the discovery of all the things that Sav is learning along the way, also is struggling with his own self-identity. Like, it's really heart-wrenching, you know, and I think it's really cool that Sav became friends with Kevin Smith, and, you know, I got the feeling that they were buddies after it, but like, even Kevin Smith, there's a lot of vulnerabilities that he's opening himself up to, because you learn a lot about the industry and how maybe like white privilege really benefited him. And, you know, and when Joey Lawrence Adams talks about their relationship, you know, Kevin kind of opened himself up to a lot of vulnerabilities, and it's a whole nother layer of the story that I just wasn't expecting. There's also a segment on, you know, how that film went to Sundance, and, you know, that's when the whole Rose McGowan thing happened with Harvey Weinstein, and, you know, they were like right there next to it, almost a part of that whole thing, you know, a part of that history. So, wow, you know, that my mind was just blown, and you know, by the end of it, you know, there's also not exactly a twist, but I could kind of see it coming. You know, obviously it's heavily, you know, hinted at throughout the whole film, but by the end, I was, like you said, I was almost in tears as well. Like, it was just an incredible documentary. This is definitely the best documentary I have seen this year.
I thought it was really, really good and really smart and unexpected as well. And I'm guessing it was unexpected for Sav too, as a filmmaker, documenting all of this, because he spoke about, you know, being a 12-year-old queer kid from, was it Kansas? I think he grew up in Kansas. And the fact that, you know, the film was important to him as a queer kid because it spoke to him in ways that other films hadn't. And he mentioned that he'd watched it countless times daily. I think he actually saw the film daily. And, you know, going through the difficulties of being a queer kid and being picked on and bullied. And, you know, that I thought was really upsetting at the beginning. But as the film goes on, you realise how appreciative Kevin Smith is, and you see that he really loved the fact that Sav appreciated the film in ways that maybe other people hadn't taken on board. I mean, because film is really important to us for different reasons, for so many different reasons. And I think to Sav, it was more on Do you know what I mean? On a higher level, it was
Yeah.
more personal and emotional for Sav.
Well, it was the first representation he probably ever saw, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
and it wasn't even his exact representation, but it was his first like exposure to any sort of representation. There's a beat in the film where they talk about film, queer film critics, blasting the film because oh, it's a straight man's perspective on what life is like for a lesbian, and one straight man can turn any lesbian straight, that whole thing. When the film was out, I kind of like saw it the way Sav saw it. Really, I was like, oh, that's representation. So there's definitely two sides to every story, and I can understand the queer community not liking the film or criticizing it because it's a very valid criticism. It's like, you can have like bullet points of points you want to make in a film and like what you want to convey. This film has like 10 different bullet points and it executes it very well. You leave the film going, wow, I actually learned a lot. I don't think there's been many documentaries that can actually do it the way that Sav did it.
Absolutely. And we have Joey, what's the actress's name that was in Chasing Amy?
Joey Lawrence Adams.
Yes, and the interview that comes up towards the end of this documentary is really the icing on the cake in a lot of ways, because Sav is interviewing her and you get this really raw, honest interview from Joey about her experience during this time. We have to remember, obviously, back in the 90s, it was so different back then in a lot of ways, because a lot of women were mistreated even more than they are now. And you think about how, women in the industry are mistreated now is bad enough. But back then it was, there were so many misogynists and men that were mistreating women, either raping women or sexually abusing women. And this interview is a real eye-opener, isn't it? Because it's so honest, and you just see Sav kind of thinking probably to himself that, wow, this wasn't the interview that I was expecting.
Oh, yeah, you totally can see that. Like, he bit off more than he could chew.
Yeah.
It's like now he has the responsibility of presenting it to a world in a way that is maybe a bit overwhelming. So
yeah, and I think he did come away. He did say that he was overwhelmed by that interview because it was quite dark. It went to quite a dark place.
I think, if you're a fan of Kevin Smith or the movie Chasing Amy, you'll like this movie. If you're a fan of queer, transgender politics and life stories, you'll like this film. Yeah. If you're like remotely interested in like the power dynamics of the Weinstein case and all that, you'll like this movie. Or if it's just like meeting your heroes, you'll like this movie. Like, there's so many reasons to like this movie.
And also, if you're a fan of cinema, I think it's a really important documentary because it explains and validates the power of cinema and how not just kids, not just young people, but I think people just take away so much from a film without it being the obvious reasons of, oh, I like the performance or I like the actors in it. It's actually more than that.
Like, we're going through this process of talking about the film and just all these things popping into my head, like the relationship between Sav and his girlfriend too. Like, yeah. So interesting, so interesting. And another story, like
this, and that's really moving too, because you see this relationship almost strengthening because of these experiences, and that's a beautiful thing. That sounds really cliched and quite corny, but it's a really beautiful thing, and I think that it demonstrates how beautiful people can be, and respectful people can be.
Yeah. Our world is full of doom and gloom, but and this film doesn't shy away from the doom and gloom, but it does leave you going, hey, like, I have faith in humanity. Absolutely.
So star rating, I'm guessing it's a high one for you. It was 5 for me. I think it's one of the best films that I've seen this year at LFF. Yes.
Yeah. Definitely my favorite film so far, and I hope this film gets the credit that it does documentary wise. So I'll be rooting for this one. I'm telling my friends all about it. So
I posted on Instagram yesterday from the Boys on Film account saying, is it too early to say the best film of LFF? And I picked out 3 of my favourites, and that was Red Rooms, which I saw, which was phenomenal. That was a couple of days ago. This psychological thriller about a serial killer, and also this film, which obviously very different, but still one of the best films of LFF.
Immediately after I saw the film, I posted about it on Instagram, and Sav liked it and gave me a comment, and I was like, "Oh, that's so cool!"
Oh, wow.
Like having an instant connection with the director immediately after you see a film.
Can I just say also, I think Sav Rodgers has proved that he's a really good filmmaker with this, because so many documentaries we've seen that miss things or don't deliver something that's interesting. This is interesting for so many reasons, and also he kind of gave people the chance to be completely honest as well. And documentaries, I think you need that in a documentary. You need it to be transparent.
And usually where documentaries go wrong is like with the pacing and the level of keeping the viewer engaged. And there were so many good stories in this whole journey that it was hard not to stay engaged and glued to the screen. So
yeah.
Oh, and even like the Go Fish movie and how that was all tied in together, and how Kevin created Empire off of his very similar film to Go Fish, even though that they were again like toxic masculinity and the inner workings of the business, and
I think it's brilliant that I haven't actually seen Chasing Amy, but I still took away a lot from this film. So I don't think you need to see that film to appreciate this documentary. I mean, I saw Clerks. I know you say Clerks. We say Clerks, but I didn't really like that. But I think now I understand Kevin Smith as a filmmaker. I think I'm going to go back and dip back into that again.
Yeah. Like I said, there's a few documentaries about Kevin Smith, but this one, and it's not a documentary about him, but this one specifically is like a must-see for any Kevin Smith fan.
Yeah. So it's called Chasing Amy. Have you seen it at the London Film Festival? If you have, drop a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe. We are Boys on Film. We will return soon with another movie review. I'm guessing it'll be something from the LFF this year, because we've got so many to get through. Although, admittedly, probably not as many as previous years.
Yeah, I think in the end, I usually do about 20 films, and I think I'm only going to get to about 10 this year.
Yeah.
I've missed a few that just didn't work out with my schedule, but it's an interesting year for LFF, different from other years.
Yeah,
We'll just leave it at that.
Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.